Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to What Are You Painting Now? And of course, this is our 10-minute section beforehand where we just do a bit of an audio test, make sure that everything's working fine and so on. But yeah, we just go over the week that was and talk about whatever it is that we want to. And if there's any people on at the moment, we usually talk about something that's going on the website or just something that's going on in the thread. But yeah, more or less, that's pretty much it. So it's been a pretty slow week for WAYPN this week. I know that it's been a bit of a slow week for myself because with what's going on with my life is at the moment just had a friend who just had a wedding, and so I had that going on. So just a small event, but yeah, so I just thought I would talk to you guys, see if you've got anything to say, see what's going on, anything like that. But yeah, it's been a bit of a slow one on the forums this time around. I think it's just the time of year. I believe that soon everybody's going to be on holidays, and then things will really ramp up. Also, Kingdom's Death is due to be released, and I'm sure that I will have a flood of people coming in after I start talking about the thing myself, talking about how foolish I am. Hey, Panzer Kaput. Nice to see you, mate, and I'm glad that you can confirm that you can see and hear. But yeah, got a drink here so I don't have to rush off to the fridge during the middle of the thing. Although I know that Aura in a Bag loves that one. But yeah, so if there's any questions that you guys have for the night, feel free now. But yeah, there's not a lot going on in what's driving me absolutely nuts. So where I live, we had regular heat of above 30. So I decided I could do a water feature for my Armies on Parade. And I thought that that would be all good. So the reason why this is important is when you're using certain kinds of resin, some will be heat dried, others will be chemical reaction. And of course, the moment I put that down, for the next 3 days, we've been pregnant with rain, and the last 2 days, we have been just bucketing, absolutely bucketing down with rain. It has been just absolutely bucketing. Luckily, the wedding was not affected at all, which is good. And yeah, so Panzer Kaput says that he's painting some Witchfinder figures, sorry, Witchfinder General for his Halloween club. And yeah, he says that it's 15 in autumn, and that's high. Yeah, well, it is Australia, and I guess I will. I'll bring it up again. Here we go. This, if it's gonna come up. Here we go. Here is an indication of what Australia is like for the uninitiated. It is bloody hot at times. So yeah, as you can see, that just a little high right there. So I'm just going to fix up the thread, and then I'm going to be going into it full ball. But yeah, as per usual, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them. And I'm just going to give a quick plug to the Hobby Weekender. And basically what the Hobby Weekender is it's just a thread run on the forums where people can drop in, hi, and it's a lot more fun. It's a lot less structured than the rest of the forums, and it's a bit more of a community thing than it is just here's what I'm working on. It's somewhere where you can sort of just joke around and such. Nothing too crazy, but yeah. So that is pretty much all on that one. Yeah, I do really like the interesting questions that they come up with. I always find it interesting anyway. So I'm just fixing up those threads now. Unfortunately, I'm very much a man, and when I am talking, I have trouble with things where it involves the talking part of your brain. So if I'm talking, I have trouble typing. So yeah, and I know that dead air is, of course, wonderful to listen to. So yeah, I'm just trying to fill the dead air while we're just doing this testing time before I jump into all of the threads. And yeah, so I'm liking some of the stuff that I've been seeing. There's been some really interesting pieces coming up recently. But yeah, I do really like seeing people showing off their full projects rather than just bits and pieces. I will see if there is anybody else about, and then we're going to go to the countdown because it's only 3 minutes left. And then we are all on. But yeah, so there's that one bit about the resin. It's something that you've got to keep in mind when working with resin, because if you're in England, it's something that you might want to keep in mind of, because the one that I'm working with is Woodland Scenic. I'm using just standard chemical dry resin for the pool and for the base. But yeah, it dries via heat. So if you want to do a water feature for something, just remember it's going to take you a long time, and that heat and sunlight will cure it. But if you're going to use a heat gun, I wouldn't recommend it, because if you're using a two-part feature, right, say you've got the base resin like I do, it does not react well to a heat gun. I found that out during testing. But yeah, so there's pretty much that, and other than that, it's gone really, really good. I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm going to be throwing my Sylvaneth on it, and hopefully people will like that. But Armies on Parade is very different this time round. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting to the countdown. All right, just 30 seconds left until we are starting. All right, and as per usual, if you're on the forums, go hello to people and tell them that it's on, because hopefully they'll come over and say hello. All right, just 10 seconds now, and we are about to kick off. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to What Are You Painting Now? It is the second week of quarter 4 for 2017. Can you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? We are well beyond the future, the Predator 2 predicted. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are living in the future. And now is the time. So let's get right to it. We're starting off with Gorilla with a Brush, and I have to say, I really love this thing that he just threw up here. The Stranger Things logo, which is mornings are for contemplation and coffee. And that's one thing. I try to make this for an international audience, and I do believe that at this time, it will be morning for Gorilla with a Brush. And it is very, very much evening for myself. It is 10 o'clock where I am, but let's start off with this bad boy right here. Now, as you know, I usually don't comment until everything is fully done up. Now, he hasn't done the basing, but I do want to give a few comments. But I'm going to have a quick sip of my caffeinated drink, as he suggested, and get right into it. So one of the things that I wanted to point out here, right, is take a look at these very bold lines that he has with this highlighting here. That's something to keep in mind. Like, even expert painters like Gorilla with a Brush still use these kinds of techniques to have those really sort of bold looking miniatures. Now, of course, there's all sorts of things that we could get into, like the tartan, the glow effects, all of this, but we won't, because it's just a work in progress. It is an absolutely astonishingly, shockingly beautiful work in progress, but a work in progress nonetheless. So let us move on to our next piece, and we will get right into it. So our next piece is by Lawn Orr, and he's been working on these guys for a little while. And what I really like about what Lawn Orr has been doing is he's been going through his whole process of how he does things. Now, usually he gives a bit of a blurb on what he's done, how he's done it, that sort of thing, and I'd read it out. But I'm just going to quickly read his comment. At Calidors, love the new board, but you say it's fancy. I can clearly see where a spaceship has crashed. I suppose there's no reason that aliens couldn't crash in the medieval/fantasy of a medieval battlefield. Sorry I missed the last 2 live streams. I know. I'm very deeply hurt, man. Very deeply hurt. But real life got in the way. But hope to be there next week. Well, Lawn Orr, if you're here, say something. All right. Next up, we have Pierre's with some absolutely delightful old hammer miniatures. Now, we have seen quite a few of these guys before, and I absolutely love how he gives, you know, the nice, clean, crisp background. And so everyone knows it's important that, you know. And he missed me too. All right, moving right along. So I absolutely loved this paint job. Now, there's a couple of things that I wanted to comment on. First off, as you all know, I love basing, and I wanted to comment on this basing right here. So this, to me, ladies and gentlemen, is how you do snow. Now, of course, there are the more snow-covered areas, right? But take a look, right? The snow covers quite a few things, right? And there's all little bits of it everywhere, right? But you can tell that there's other stuff going on underneath. If you just have a blur of white, it doesn't have a great deal of character to it, even though that may be extremely realistic. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is those eyes, ladies and gentlemen. Look at them. They are absolutely astonishingly beautiful. He's put an amazing amount of work into that face, and I think that it is really showing. See, I think that a lot of the times with these older models, they give you a real chance to show your painting skills. The other thing that I particularly like about this model is this wooden shield right here. It's just gorgeous the way that he's done up the wood here, right? And great clashing colors, right? Now, I'm saying this every week, but I feel that it's something that should be said because we never know who's watching this week. All right, the big thing is for this, remember, metallics are a color, right? So what's gold? Gold is yellow. What's steel? Steel is blue. And thus, you have red, blue, yellow. Primary color scheme, just beautiful, subtle enough that you don't spot it at first. Absolutely phenomenal. All right, his shield, I do like the way that it's painted up, but more what I like is the way that the battle damage is done up here on it. You know, the scratches and scrapes and all of those sorts of things showing through to the other bits of paint that have been left behind, and how nice that looks. All right, next up, we've got Gobbo just showing off how he starts off with his miniatures. Now, see, I think that this is still very much an important way of doing things. With this, you get an idea of how people build their miniatures up. And it's really important to understand that painting is a process. That's very much something that I have been on about for a while now. But, you know, very much like the Catholic preacher, you got to hammer it home again and again. But let us move on. All right, so next up, we've got Dead Dave. And once again, we see a bit of him showing his process. So he had a bit of an urgent urge to paint up some zombies. And he's going for a much different look. They're looking very sort of spectral at the moment. I'll see if he gives a comment onto that. Yeah, he wants a sort of zombie mutant ghost army. But yeah, they're very much looking like that. Now, this is one of the things that I wanted to really get to on the show because, ladies and gentlemen, I think that it's very important that things be a two-way street. And usually I won't comment on a comment until we get to the weekly WAYPN. But in this instant, I felt compelled because I felt that maybe only one pin man thought I was perhaps giving him a bit of a hard time. But that is not the case at all. So what he's trying to show right here is one of the things that I talked about in last week's show is eyes and how they can be an absolute bugger to do, and how that was really the only spot where I saw improvement for with him. Now, see, what you see right here is that the eyes are very well defined in a sort of bulbous type shape, which makes it very difficult to do. And yeah, we had a bit of back and forth on that. And Gorilla with the Brush added a little bit there too about that. All right, so next up we've got more from Lawn Ore, and we see some more works in progress. And they are looking absolutely wondrous. But hopefully we will get to see them all finished up. I know that we do get to see these all finished up at the end of the week, which is absolutely lovely. And one of the things that I really love about seeing stuff like this is seeing something different, because if you see stuff like this on the forums, right, you get this idea that it's not just the 40K forum or the fantasy forum. It is a painting thread, and we don't really care what you're painting so long as you're painting. Speaking of, next up, we've got Eldar Veteran, and I tell you what, this is absolutely beautiful. I tell you what, it's I do believe it's still a work in progress. I'm not 100% certain on that, but this is just a wonderful way of using an airbrush. So what he's done here is he's used an airbrush to give a very sort of subtle highlight in some areas. So like along here, there's the more subtle highlights that you can see. and leaving some other areas darkened, like this middle area, without using washes, which of course is something that really, really is quite noticeable on a lot of flat surface like these ones right here. But yeah, I think that it's come together absolutely beautifully. But I think the other thing is that there's some great contrast of kind with the bone, the blue, and the metallics. But hopefully we will see this bad boy all finished up soon enough. So I do believe that this is a work in progress. I'm not 100% sure, but taking a look at that down there, I see no base, so I'm going to assume. I know it makes an ass out of me and you, but hopefully that is the case. All right, next up, this is one of the things that I very much wanted to touch on again in this thing. One of the things that you always have to remember is scale. Scale is so important when it comes to these various miniatures, right? This thing right here is tiny. It is, judging by the size of that paint bottle in the background, is maybe a third or maybe a quarter the size of the lid of a GW paint. That is teeny tiny. So when you see just absolutely beautiful subtle edging done through washes and that sort of thing, you can see that there's some real talent on show here in the way that they are doing that. And I think that this is an absolutely brilliant job that he's done, right? And one of the other things is that you also have to remember he doesn't have a lot of room for creativity here, because it's much like the historicals, something where he's got a canon he must subscribe to. There is TIE fighters. I do believe this is a TIE fighter. I'm not sure. Does it say the name? Yeah, it is a TIE fighter. All right. But the thing is, he's got a very limited color palette, a very tiny model, and I think despite all of that, it's just come together absolutely, absolutely beautiful. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if any of you have comments, you know, feel free to share them. All right, so next up, we have the final lawman here. Because we were talking about eyes, he says, thankfully, he has a nice wide brim on his hat, so he's got shading for his eyes. As it happens, the eyes on this one didn't actually turn out so bad in terms of photography. I think the hat shading of his eyes makes it look pretty cool. One of the things I'm not happy about is the pattern on his waistcoat. There is a faint pattern of dots that hasn't really come out too well. Now, I can barely see what he means about this faint pattern of dots, but remember, that might be the camera itself, right? But what I particularly like is these nice bold colors contrasting. So we've got the red of the coat contrasting with those beautiful pink flowers that he uses. And I'll say it once, I've said it again, and I'll be saying it some more so long as he's painting these guys up. This is absolutely gorgeous basing. Take a look at it. It just, this, ladies and gentlemen, is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about basing. See, there's not a whole lot there, but what is there just tells a magnificent story about where they are and about what they're doing, who these people are. So I do believe that he's holding a cigar. I think if you wanted to touch things up, you know, maybe have it so that it's lit. But once again, you know, it's a bit hard to do these sorts of things because he's very much fighting these models. So when we talked about the eyes, we also talked about the models, and we talked about some of the times with certain models, it is so hard. You are spending so much time fighting the model, trying to make it look good. That is why that TIE fighter looks so good. But yeah, I very much like how he's all come together. And the other thing is, man, I love these shots. I think that in Sapphire, it really, really sells the shot of the shaded eyes with the lawman. But I really do think that the shaded eyes with the lawman has worked out very nicely. And I think that's one thing that you can do to get away from some of the times when you have particular trouble with something that you're not so talented with. All right. So next up, we've got Bop, 3,635. I didn't know that there was that many bops out there. You know, like maybe it's just news to me. I don't know. It's not something that I was particularly aware of. All right, and he's been doing up Logan Grimnar for Armies on Parade. Now, so this I'm going to have to give him a bit of a hard time on his base. So I do really like how we can see something underneath that sort of thing, right? But I do think that whatever snow effect that he's using, that it is very much working against him. With that sort of crinkly sort of look, it makes it look more winter wonderland than it does the sort of grim darkness of the future snow, you know, the oppressive cold. Now, I think that GW snow is most probably the snow that I like the most. I'm sure that there's other snows out there. If anybody wants to recommend one in the chat, I am more than happy to pass that recommendation on. But as for the moment, yeah, I think very much that snow is working against you, man. And the reason why I give these critiques, as I always say, is because I'm trying to help painters grow. I don't want them to become static sort of thing. I'm just trying to give the advice that I can. And there's other people out there much more talented than myself who are more than happy to give advice if you ask them. But I'm somebody who's actually going to give it one way or the other. So there. But one of the things that I really do like with this model is the color contrast. So his power axe is lit up hot, and that contrasts beautifully, of course, with the green gemstone, but also with his power armor right here. Speaking of the power armor, there is some beautiful edging, like right here, and shading, like right here. Just very subtle bits and pieces around the joint, but I think altogether it's just a very nice paint job. I think that the eyes look very good, but I think like you're on the cusp of stepping up to going to like the next level of painting. This is really good, man, and I think for you to improve from here, you're really going to have to up your game. So the thing is, at the moment, it looks really good. And I think that the next steps up are going to be pretty harsh in, you know, trying to get to the next step. But for the moment, all I will say is I think that the snow is working against you. And I think that maybe you could touch up some of the wolf pelt on this side. But other than that, I think that it looks absolutely awesome. All right, next up, we have Janice 1004. And I tell you what, these guys are looking absolutely great. Now, these guys aren't finished. So I do believe that there's going to be a little bit more done. But as far as I know, there is finished as far as the actual paint job goes. Now, one of the things that I really love about whatever company it is that produces these is the shield pattern things that they give are just freaking gorgeous. I'm trying to remember. They're not laminades. Oh no, my brain is not working. After the wedding, it's taken everything from me. So I'm pretty much done as far as brain power goes. But yeah, so I think that they transfers. There we go. I think that the transfers are looking absolutely brilliant. And why do I actually, give any praise to transfers at all? Because putting transfers on is a talent. Transfers at all, and putting them on properly does take quite a bit of skill. But the other thing is, if you take a look at what Janice has done, he's really put quite a bit of work into making them seem realistic. So you've got all of these little marks of dust and other bits like that to give it this real sense of realism. But the other thing that you really got to just absolutely applaud with this is whites are just gorgeous. These are some of the best whites I have ever seen on the thread, and whites are an absolute nightmare. Panzer Kaput just joins in for a second saying they are little big men transfers. So yeah, little big men. I don't know the company at all, and unless I learned that these things cost $52 a sheet or something ridiculous, I would highly recommend finding these guys because those transfers are just gorgeous. I think that the skin tones are done up really, really nicely. I don't going on with the eyes, but they are sort of sculpted as if they're squinting. So I don't think that's too bad. And I just think that the spears need a little bit of a touch up just to give the wood grain sort of thing, because at the moment, compared to the rest of the model, they don't have a sense of realism to them. Because with everything else, it just seems surreal and visceral. But the spears seem like they're like literal toothpicks. And that is something that I think that you want to avoid. All right. Next up, we have myself. So if anybody wants to horrible photographing of this, but yeah, so we've got some resin in there now. I'm not sure if I've got shots of that later on, but if any of you guys in the chat want to give me a hard time about that, feel more than free. All right, next up we have the absolutely wonderful Waxer. At Calidors, Frostgrave Warbands is my son's and playing with, not painting. This was the miniature he painted a few years ago. So it seemed like your son was actually pretty decently along. Like, I don't know how old he was when he first painted these. I know that he's 18 now, and I'm sure that, that how's that song go? All I can think about is girls. That there's a chance that that might be the thing that is preoccupying his mind at the moment. But yeah, I think that like it's good the way that he's done the colors. Very muted, this one, but I think that he's pretty consistent with his coloring, and I think that it looks pretty decent. I like the sort of tarnished look to the back of this, but I do remember one model in particular from all of these. Was it this guy? It might have been this guy or that guy. In a moment, yeah, I think it was this guy, because I think he did really, really well with the layering here, right? But he just fell so much back on the wash. I feel as if like he just sort of just washed this model. And if that is the case, it's come out gorgeous. But like I just think that with some of these things, yeah, like here, that can't just be just wash unless it was painted off. I think that that's looking really good. But then you take a look at the face, and like you can see that there was a bit more work put into this guy's face than that guy's face. But yeah, so I think that he's a fairly, you know, like he's certainly not an amateur at this point, and I hope that he comes back to painting at some point. And this is what he himself has been working on, and we actually see this bad boy all finished up. And I'm surprised that they call it a genie, because that seems to me more like an ifrit than it does a genie. All right, next up we've got Dead Terps, and I'd like to say welcome, Dead Terps, because we love seeing new people on the forums. We absolutely love seeing anybody on the forums, of course, but we like seeing new people because we want this place to expand and grow, because every single new person gives us new content and gives us new comments. All right, one moment. Just caffeinating there, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So it's his Viking Warlord for the Saga models. Now, I particularly like this face, and this is going to be a running theme, Dead Trap. If you want my approval, you know, you can be a very, very mediocre painter and just do nice bases, and I will love you forever. Oh, or so the community says. But yeah, so I think that you did all right with the eyes. I think that that is where you want to be stepping up your game next, because eyes is really the thing to look out for when you're really stepping things up. And it looks like you're trying to step things up because you've come on here and hopefully you've come hoping for advice, hoping for comments. The other thing is, what I do really like is the way that you've integrated the base into the model. I think the way that you've done wood grain, especially down here, is just absolutely freaking gorgeous. Just beautiful. I think that the tattoo that you've done here doesn't show through as much. However, that may be due to lighting. You might want to take a look into something called a light box, which is basically just, it allows for the diffusion of light and makes it so that light isn't so harsh on your miniatures. The next thing that I'd talk about is with the lips here. I think that that might need just a teeny tiny bit of work, but I do really love the layering that you sort of shirt, skirt. 3 times fast. But yes, so I think that you've done really well with the main model. I think that the chainmail is very much a sort of choice, you know, not being very bright. You know, maybe you might want to run a wash over it again, but other than that, I think that that's pretty much all of my commentary, the model itself. But as for this head here, I think that you went just slightly overboard with the red, because I think that you did a lot of good waste that you can see underneath. You can tell that by the lightness of the red, so you can see the face done up underneath. Like out of the mouth, and I think around there, that looks good, but I think that all up the top here is a bit excessive. But I think that you've done a really amazing job in making this guy your warlord, man. Really well done. Next up, we've got a Saxon warlord. I was judging by the shield, and I was thinking that he might be a crusader or something. See, here, I think that the eyes aren't as great, but I think that you've done really well with the coloring and that sort of thing. I do think that you should do a bit more layering down here, but once again, that's just beautiful, man. See, you can really get away with a lot more when you've got a beautiful base, because it tells the setting of where these people are, what they're doing, sort of thing. I think that you once again might have a bit of an issue with your lighting, but I really do like how you've done the two-tone thing with the cape. So he's got the white underneath and around the back, and I think that is a pretty good choice. It really helps give some tone. So next up, we've got one of the big guys from the start. Brennan is showing us some of his Oathsworn miniatures, which I do believe is for Mouse Guard, and they're looking particularly nice. I do like this frog guy right here and the crow. I think that a lot of the other ones are very sort of atypical Mouse Guard models to me, you know, but I just love the way those feathers are done up. That looks gorgeous. And I think these little sort of, yeah, also looks really awesome. All right, next up we've got Tony Sylvie, and I tell you what, these are just absolutely gorgeous. Just absolutely phenomenal. So once again, basing, Tony, basing. What has happened with this basing, Tony? But the miniatures themselves, the paint job on those is just absolutely gorgeous. Like, these seem like real people the way that they're done up. So you've got the guy with these sort of polo shirt with the wrapping around his face, and oh, I've forgotten what these things are called now. It's going to come to me when I'm halfway down another page. That, and particularly just the way that you've done the patterning, is just absolutely freaking gorgeous. I think that looks so good, and great color contrast. You know, the purple against the yellow with the blue accentuating things. Just beautiful, man. Just beautiful. Now, I think that you've done a pretty decent job with the dark skin as well, but it doesn't look like there's a whole lot for you to riff off with the skin that is shown. So, you know, don't give yourself too much of a hard time with that. If this is your attempt at scarring, or more meant to show, if that's scarring, I think it's all right. But I think if you're the light shining off it, I don't think it's a 100% hit. But I tell you what, the way that you've done up the clothes, just absolutely gorgeous. That is the thing. Thank you, Lornor. Lornor just informed me that is called a bandana. And no, why you do this? All right. Hopefully this will not shut the whole thread down. All right, so Ugleb has shared this with us, and I'll come back to that in a moment. I did tell him, man. All right, next up we've got Pierre's, and a just absolutely beautiful sniper model here, and I love the way he has integrated the basing into this. This is just an absolutely gorgeous picture right here, because he has so synced up the way that the model is with its environment. And I think that that's absolutely great. But I would like to see, you know, a bit of something going on with that, you know, with the stuff that he's stuffed into his hat right there. But other than that, I think that it looks really freaking good. And of course, it wouldn't be Pierre's without a work in progress of a tank. And here we have some Germans. And one of the things that I particularly love about, I do believe this is Flames of War, is that not everybody is doing that whole running across the battlefield and screaming with their guns thing. There is a whole lot of people right here who are just milling about doing their job, sort of thing. And I think that these guys are just looking so great, and I love seeing them in the background of this church. And I think it just gives a sort of authenticity to these miniatures. I think that it looks absolutely gorgeous. Next up, we've got Flansen, and he's doing a new nid, and he's just finished up the base coating. So he's just so this is part of the painting process, and what he's done is he's just put the base colors. So that's where you just get for those of you who are new to painting, that's where you just get all of the colors that your model's going to be, and you put the bases on first, and then after that you work your way up, because these are some of your thickest paints, and you don't want to have any of your thickest paints interacting with any of your thinner paints. All right, so next up we've got Waxer with this genie finished. It's going to trigger me. It's a Efreet. But yeah, it's really nice. Now, one of the things that I wanted to comment on with this guy right here, you get to see it a bit more on this one and some of these other shots, right, is the way that he's gone from dark to light with the way that the model's done up. Now, a lot of people will point out that this isn't, you should do up a miniature, but for me, when it comes to flames, that is, particularly when it comes to flames, so much. I think that that sort of darkness into light gives it a certain bit of menace. The only thing that I would comment on is I'd sort of give a red glow to the eyes, or like a yellow, and sort of have that furnace out. But that is more a stylistic choice. Next up, we've got the Verdun Alpha from Wild West Exodus. And I tell you what, he is a pretty crazy looking character. I really like the color contrast with this. You don't see it as much on the front as you do on the back, but that color contrast is just absolutely beautiful. And of course, how his red eye contrasts with just about everything that he's holding. And I think that that really makes it. There's also some other things that I like this soft highlighting here, right? With it's most likely, I'm not going to say that it is 100% the case, but it is very much likely that it's from an airbrush. And also, just take a look at this basing here, ladies and gentlemen. That's all you need to do for basing. You don't need to go crazy, right? Just some different levels of granules of sand. Done. Mwah. Brilliant, right? Sell the environment that your character is in. And I think that it looks really nice. I think that, you know, you very much could step up your game with this guy here because of the level of detail on that. The thing that I'd look at doing is maybe accentuating this in a different color. If it's meant to be skin, I think that it's fine, but I have no idea what it is with this guy in particular, but I think that it's come up very nicely. I do think that the sort of shininess on the end of this stuff takes away from it a little with its more very organic feel, but yeah, that's about it. Next up, we've got Sotonus Polinius, also known as Andy, and this is one of the Tannis first and only, also known as Gaunt's Ghost. And one of the things I particularly like to see when Andy's doing up 40K is he really seems to just absolutely go for gold with these models. So first off, one of the things that I particularly like is the way that he's done up those tattoos, those armband tattoos. I think that they are looking just damn fine, ladies and gentlemen. The other thing is it's very much their camo scheme, but I think that he's really brought it to life. And I think that the gun looks just wonderful. The way that he's done up the wood grain in this bit right here. It's a bit hard to notice, but it is there. I think that he's just put a lovely amount of detail into this model. And yeah, that's like, I really wish that I could say more about him, because I think that he's, you know, put a lot of love and care into this guy. And that is one of the things that I love about seeing with Andy's models. So here are those Janus guys all finished up, and take a look at that basing, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, is it absolutely gorgeous or what? Now, when I'm talking about basing, I really love seeing things like this, because it gives the feeling of real terrain. Now, there isn't necessarily a place that looks like this, but when you take a look at those variety of things, it really does seem like a real place. Like that only patchy grass would be able to struggle here amongst a sort of gravelly ground. You know, wherever it can get a foothold, it'll struggle for life. And, you know, there's the odd bit where, you know, it's come up nice and rich because, you know, an animal's died there or something like that. So yeah, I think that that looks really nice. I really like how the wolf pelts contrast so much against the pure white. And once again, I just have to say that that is absolutely gorgeous work with the white. I think that it is just astoundingly brilliant how he has done all of that up. All right, so next up we have Dogma 2097, and he's just been doing some base work with the model, sorting out his camouflage patterns and also working out his basing. Now, see, this is another important thing to remember. Some of the times, if you're going to have things stuck in the ground, as he is, you've got to remember that with that, you want to have them in the ground before you put your ground down, because if you don't, it's not going to have that same sort of feeling of dust covered or like bursting forth, that sort of thing. You've got to work on those things beforehand. So thank you very much, Dogma 2097. And next up, we have Mage, who's been working on these Dark Elf models. Now, I do know that he's pretty much just finishing up with the basing, so I'm going to give him a bit of a commentary. I really love the skirting here. Now, I know that there's not a whole lot of color with Dark Elves, which sometimes can be a bit of a problem, but I think that they are looking just absolutely beautiful with that color contrast of the red against the purple. It's much more of a complementary color scheme with the or sea green. I'm not too sure what that kind of green you'd call it as the contrast. I think that they're just looking damn fine, and I will absolutely love seeing what he does with the basing, because there's been a lot of suggestions and I'm pretty interested in what he's going to do with them. So here we go. Next up, we've got Pierre's, and yep, so I have been reading things, which is good. And some more Old Hammer. And I tell you what, this is the thing when it comes to Old Hammer. It is much bag. Some of the times you're going to have absolutely gorgeous models. Other times, not so much at all. Now, see, I think that this one sort of fits slightly in between the two. So I think that the shields, now I don't know how much of this is texture and how much of this is painted, but I'm going to hazard a guess, and I'm going to say that a lot of this is just painted on. See, I do like the snake's body, but it's a bit too segmented, that sort of thing. And I think that it, like, the model itself is a bit rough, but I really do think that Pierre's went above and beyond trying to bring this thing out. So he's done great work with the eyes. Gorgeous, gorgeous work with that shield. I think that the blood on this is a bit overboard, but I'll hammer for you. You know, don't ever worry too much about. I like how he's done this up here, you know, his little satchel there to give a bit of color contrast with what he has within his little bag there. And yeah, I think that there's some really great color contrast there. And one of the things that I really love seeing is seeing what he's actually working with. All right, next up we've got Hutch, and he's been finishing off some of these ships. And I tell you what, they are just looking gorgeous. So unfortunately, I don't think that we can get in too close. But that reminds me, I just wanted to. Oh dear, so that zooms in a bit too much when I click on it that way. So Uglub, I'm unsure how to say his name. I think has done a really, really good job with doing up this battered building here. I think that it looks, you know, very much as to what it's meant to be. He's done some really great effects with the pavement, the way that he's done up the discoloration, that sort of thing. I think if there is any downside to it, I think that this paint looks a bit too uniform and a bit too untouched. It doesn't look flaky at all. It doesn't look as if it's peeling like you've got with these bits right in the middle here with the plaster just falling off it. But other than that, I think that he's done just a gorgeous, gorgeous job with this. And hopefully we will get to zoom in a bit on these. Now, see, unfortunately, I still can't see to the level of detail that I'd want to see with these guys. I think that there's some really bold color choices, and I think that that's come through a lot. And one of the things is with larger models, if they're too detailed, they can sort of have all of their little details drowned out through their sheer size. But I think that he's done really, really well with these. But the other thing that he's doing up is these wacky racer models. And I think that they've just got such a gorgeous amount of character to them. And I just think that they look so lovely, the way that he's done them up. It just really reminds me of those old cartoons and the old Hot Wheels sort of thing, and how it was dare I say it, a simpler time. And they just look so lovely. And it's really nice to see something so different up here. But I love all of the different characters to them. Like, you know, you've got this car which almost looks like a jock's football shirt, and how you've got the sort of there's a lot to love in these models. And I think if I kept going on them, I think that I might be here for just a tad bit too long. All right, so great work, Hutch, and I think that they look absolutely beautiful. All right, Ghost Bear said, I just plowed through all 8 pages and get some painting done this weekend. Time to work on another point of Romans for Saga. So Andre has done this model up from a 3D printer. Now, for the most part, I'm very dubious when it comes to 3D printers. So it's for his June game. Yeah, so I think that it's come together fairly well painting wise. So I really like this sort of mottled color that he's done here. I think that that looks really good. I like the way that he's done the eyes. So he's done that black rim with the big white for the sort of actual eye itself, but the black gives it a bit of a backdrop, so it's not just this white against the skin. It gives it a feeling of depth. and those little purple bits there, right? Allow it to have a bit of color contrast. But I think is fighting that model. It seems to me as if it is not 100% the best. As far as 3D printed models go, I think it's looking pretty darn fine. Next up, we've got the man, the myth, the legend, Brushstrokes, who has been working on his armies on parade. And of course, as per always, he is an absolute madman. Now, I think that these waves are looking just gorgeous, man. I still give that recommendation, especially for around here, of maybe doing a water effect over half of that to give that idea of, you know, the sand being stained by the water, but it only goes up so far and that sort of thing. I'm sure that you've got gorgeous beaches where you are. That's sarcasm, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, it's just looking great. So at Calidors, I heard your suggestion about adding gloss partway up to the wet of the sand line. It was something that I had thought about too. It when it came to testing it on my test piece, it just didn't look right. So I've optimized for the so I've opted for the matte version of it. Yeah, so I'm not so much talking about a gloss, but I'm talking about an actual water effect, like a really, really thin one. I'm not talking about pouring resin over the whole damn thing, right? If you were to use resin, I'd only paint it on, and of course you'd have to throw away that brush. But like, I think that if you did that, it could just give an extra level of character to it. But if your tests aren't working out with it, don't try things, man, because this is an absolutely gorgeous board, and I think that it's going to come together so well. And if you don't win, you know, there'll be hell to pay. But hopefully we will be able to get help from the forums, because it's very much going to be done all online, ladies and gentlemen. All right, next up, we've got Said with some Mantic Orcs. Now, these guys are looking pretty darn decent, right? I really like the color scheme that he's gone for, but Mantic doesn't quite have that same level of detail as, say, Games Workshop, which can be a bit of a blessing at times, because let's admit it, Games Workshop can be gaudy, perhaps. And I'm not talking about LaForge. For those of you who watch Star Trek Next Generation, that was hilarious. All right. So I think that that's looking pretty nice. And I think that very much you are getting the assembly line style down pat. I think once we see them all together on one of those sort of Mantic rows, I think that that will very much determine how good it looks. All right. Next up, we've got Sotonus Polinius with a tiger tank, and I think that it is looking pretty damn good, but not as good as the German atop it. I think that he's put a tremendous amount of effort into that German right there. Camo scheme, and I really do like this heaviness of chipping that he's done around here and there. I think that that looks really good, but take a look at that German officer, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, that looks gorgeous, the way that he's done it up there. So yeah, I think that the tank is looking pretty damn fine. I really do like all of these attachments that you put onto the things, guys. I think that that really does make the tank look a lot less, how do you say, plain, a lot less generic. But the way that you've been doing up those German officers, it's just gorgeous. I mean, maybe you could touch up the brown of this cord right here to his headphones, but other than that, I think it's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, so Dead Turp says a thing of beauty. And yeah, and this is one of the things that you'll see here occasionally, ladies and gentlemen. Mage has asked a plea for people to come over and give him a hand with different basing techniques, as I was talking about before. But if you've got a request like that and you don't want to sort of flood the forum or that sort of thing, don't worry about it. Go, here's what I want, here's what I want to do, you know, sort of thing. Just put a shortened version of your post up here, you know, so that people have an idea of what it is that you want to do. Because often when they read this, they don't read just please help me with basing with these guys. They read beastsofwar.com/group and then they just blank out. They just go, that's a lot of text. That's a link. I know that's a link. But yeah, so Pierre's and an absolutely beautiful Norse raiding party slowly coming together. All right, next up we've got Doug the Thug, and he's doing some absolutely gorgeous work with these Stormcast Eternals. Now, I tell you what, I really, really like the color contrast here. So the way that this copper is right here almost has it at an orange, contrasting so much against the face. And of course, both of these contrasting against the purple. You know, it's just so vibrant the way that he's done it up. And you've just got all of this color contrast going on everywhere on the model. Now, of course, I do think that the blood here is a bit over the top, but this is Games Workshop, and that is how they're meant to be. Oh, look at that. That's tasty right there, the little drip of it and everything. So once again, this is more a sort of taste thing, but I do believe that I think that those would have done you better if you've gone from Xandri Dust into the bone colors instead of From a White, because From a White is, number one, pretty hard, but the other thing is I think that it would very much suit the character of what you're doing there, because I do think that he's a really nice looking guy. Now, the basing, I very much like most of it, but I'm not too sure what this stuff is here. I think I've commented on this more than once now, but I do not think whatever this flock is itself, like I think the rocks are good, but whatever this flock is, I think is very much working against you. So once again, we've got the blood and gore going on there, right? But that purple against the orange, see, take a note of the way that he uses color contrast. It is just lovely, ladies and gentlemen, just lovely. Just beautiful color contrast. And of course, the gold on the various pieces contrasting with that. So we've got the gold contrasting against the red, and of course the purple and the more bluish tones of the steel. So just absolutely gorgeous the way that it's put together. All right, next up we've got Lornor, and he has finished off his Balefire catapults. So give him a bit of a hard time because I've been very much using his technique. I think maybe you might want to throw some rocks into this gravel here, even though you're using the sort of glass sand, the black sand sort of thing. They do have little chunks of rocks in amongst it. I think that's the way that you could have stepped up your basing there, because the reason I say that, ladies and gentlemen, is Lornor has taught me a particularly great technique, which I have been showing off to every man and his dog ever since. And the thing is, I think he's the sort of person who appreciates that sort of comment. Because, ladies and gentlemen, some people are very much interested in certain parts of painting, And I think Lornor and myself are very much interested in basing because it very much tells the story of where you guys are. So I really do like the green eyes of the skulls. I think that looks absolutely great. I think that the way that you've done up the bones, I really love that. You know, that sort of more naturalistic bone color, I think looks particularly good. But let us just go down to the piece itself right here, where we can see multiple angles. I think I'm actually going to scroll up on this one because I think that it is much better when we're taking a look at the sort of larger side. I think that these little bits of rope right here, binding it all together, look just absolutely gorgeous. I think that is particularly nice. I also like this sort of broken look to the metal plate that they've sort of wrapped around. All right, so Lornor says, I know I skimped on the bases. Mantic bases are small and the slaughter is on their feet. Desk limiting my options. I would have liked to do more. Yeah, so what he's talking about when he's talking about slaughter bases is these guys are not whole miniatures in themselves that will stand by themselves. So they've got a small bar underneath them, and he has to place that in a slot within the base. So yeah, I get why you might want to have toned down your approach. It very much makes sense. But yeah, I very much think that it is the ropes and that sort of thing that really gives the character to this. Not a bar, a disc, he says. Okay, so these are on a circular little disc. Those ones are even worse. Yeah, yeah. He says that they're very hard to remove, and yeah, trust me, I know. And he says that he's scared to cut off that he'll cut off their feet. And yes, I also know this feeling because I have done this more than once. But yeah, so I think that very much it's the rope that really gives the character to that. So we've got brushstrokes showing off some of the basic parts of his painting process. So this is very much just him going through the base colors. But the other thing that he does, right, is he does up a lot of the base colors, and then he does up the skin, and then he moves on to other things. So there it is, all done up, absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. But you get an idea as to how he does it. So those eyes, ladies and gentlemen, just absolutely gorgeous. Also, take a look at the way that he's done up the black on that. I think that the way that he's done up the black on that is just absolutely freaking phenomenal. It's just, for those of you who haven't worked with black, I very much suggest giving it a go just to understand how some people can be so frustrated by it, because painting black can be just an absolute nightmare. It's not a lot of fun. So he's gone up through the grays for his layering and for his edge highlights there. The other thing is, I really love the way that he's done this grayish white beard and hair. I think that looks great. And of course, he's done really well with all of the little bits of detail on, you know, for example, his archer's brace there, and on the tips of the dagger sheaths, all of those sorts of things. And of course, absolutely gorgeous basic. All right, next up, we've got Sertonus Polinius and Starship Troopers. Would you like to know more? Click this underneath. So these guys very much same deal as what he's usually dealing with, in that he's got a color scheme that he has to follow. But you do have a bit more room because, I mean, remember they were going off a book. And so you can be a bit more creative with these guys. I really do like the basing because it very much looks like the way that it was done in the movie. And I tell you what, that is a classic movie. Lornor says, love this picture. It's all in the slogan. Yeah, it's such a great movie. And I often find the people who don't get that movie, the movie which it satirizes it satirizes a lot, but it satirizes patriotism, the media, but more just how people can be sucked in by things and how they don't question, and how the media makes it so that people don't question. And that's it for me. I mean, it is just such a fantastic movie. But on to the miniatures. So I think that he's done pretty well with the skin, especially take a look at that lipstick right there. I think that that's really nice. You'll find that it is often very, very hard to do up lipstick on models without having it look like clown makeup. So that is particularly difficult to do. And I think that he's really pulled it off. All right, but unfortunately, there's not a whole lot I can comment on because we've got that beautiful black, the way that he's done it up. We've got some great edging there, but I can't talk about color contrast because he's, like I said, following the movie. I do think that he's done well to really bring out the best in these models, though. And I'm surprised that these actually have decent sculpts. You'd think that some sort of awful third party would have picked them up and mass produced them. But these are actually some pretty nice models. And I think that he's done really well to give them a little bit of love. But yeah, I think that they look great. And I do have some bug models myself that I used for the mycetic spores before they had them themselves. All right, next up we've got Doug the Fug, and so these are the shield walls from the Storm of Sigmar box. So these are just some of the other guys following that same color scheme we saw before. But I really like how he's done some of the chipping, some of that sort of thing. I think that all of that looks really nice. But of course, that greenish glow against these orange marks, that is just beautiful. I think that he's done an absolutely phenomenal job with that. And using color contrast when you have the ability to choose your own colors is so important. Because, I mean, with these historical guys, they're very much trapped with the colors they have to work with, right? Even movie accurate guys. So using color contrast is just so important. But very much, I think like my same comments from before go for all of these guys. I think that this would be done up better in a bone, same as this over here. I think that, you know, that particular grass is working against him a bit, but I do think that these guys look really nice, and I just absolutely love the color contrast. All right. I do like seeing some nice back shots, so I've got an idea of what's going on there, because often some of the times models can look very plain from the front and look very interesting from the back. And as Warren said in one of the previous weekenders, the reason it's so important is because you are the person who's going to be seeing their back most of the time. Next up, we've got Pierre's doing weathering. I mean, of course, Pierre's is doing some weathering. What did we expect, ladies and gentlemen? And of course, he's not finished yet. But yeah, I love seeing the works in progress, as I've said, ladies and gentlemen, because it gives you an idea of how people go through their process. And one of the things that Pierre's does first is the metallics, because metallics, especially Games Workshop metallics, have great coverage. So if you miss with a metallic, like say Games Workshop one, and it hits somewhere on the other part of the model, it's going to stick. You know, unfortunately, unlike a lot of other colors, you're not going to have a lot of ease painting it off, you know, with a bit of water and a bit of brushwork. All right, next up we've got Hutch, not Hitch, with some more. And see, I think that this is a bit of a better shot because we can get an idea of the interior of the boat, and I think that it is looking damn grand. So I see. I don't know what scale these guys are at, which doesn't help me a whole lot in knowing knowing how to judge them. But I feel like maybe some wood grain in there wouldn't go astray. But other than that, I think that they're looking damn fine. I really like them. All right. So next up, we've got, and this is the last one that I had loaded up before I started things off. So if you will, excuse me just a moment, we will go to Beats of War and we'll make our way to the hobby forum. Hopefully any one of these files will be it. I'll just go to the Beats of War thing and I'll fix it up. So all right, ladies and gentlemen, because I just want to load up the next bit because we do have a tiny bit more to do after this. I do believe it's just one image and then we're all done. Fairly early. So, ladies and gentlemen, if any of you have any questions at all, I would say now's the time to get typing. And if you want me to go into more detail on your model or on somebody else's model because you want to know how to do something or anything like that, now would be the time to ask questions because we're going to be wrapping up soon enough. So we've got good old Bob Moore here, and then after that we've got 2 more posts, and we're all done. All right, so Bob Moore, he's just been doing up his bolt action terrain, and so it's something very different, ladies and gentlemen, seeing somebody do up a whole board, and it's nice seeing that people are still doing up like full stuff themselves. So he's done up a bit of a pier here, and he's got these wooden bits up. You know, it's nowhere near, I would say, finished, unlike these bits over here. I reckon he's done really well with that fencing over there. I think that looks absolutely gorgeous. And even though that a lot of it's a bit sort of simple, I think that it looks really, really nice the way that he's done stuff up. And it allows you to give a bit of character and depth to what you're playing with. I always hate seeing boards without terrain, boards with unpainted terrain, and boards with unpainted models. You know, if you're really gonna get into it, ladies and gentlemen, allow your imagination to flourish and just give yourself permission to actually go for gold. All right, so first off, we've got Lornor and these absolutely beautiful boats. So he said he followed the guide from @Tina that he saved back in March, and it's come out really well. So he was expecting these to be not so good, but they turned out pretty damn well. And I would have to say that I agree. I think that Tina is often unfairly criticized because I think she's Russian. If correct me if I'm wrong, Lornor, but yeah. So I think that these are actually pretty nice sculpts for 3D prints. I think that they've turned out pretty darn well. I know it's not they because it's only a singular one, but I think the only problem with the print itself is that in here. Lorna does not know, but anyway, she sort of just does the lone post and runs away. So she's like, "Here's a guide," and then somebody will be like, "You didn't do that guide." She's like, "Yeah, I did. I'm not just a gamer girl." But yeah, I think that it's come together really well the way you've used, the dry brushing, that sort of thing. I know that we're zoomed in super close on these ones, but the reason is because, we can. And like, I think that it's come together really well, man. Like, just really nice. So if you guys want to know how to do that guide, just go to here, how to paint wood. Seems like it would be pretty easy to find. And next up, Lights Out 1985 has finished off his dragon. Now, first off, that base, I really love it. Even the part where I was a bit questioning on, I was like, oh, I don't know, that looks a bit plain. I think that that's come up really nice with that sort of moldy sort of look there. I really like the way that we've got the wayward shield right there, the bits of meat and so on. I love the slime dripping from his teeth. I think that that looks absolutely phenomenal. I like the way that this comes out, but if I was going to criticize anything, I would say maybe do another transfer color into that white here, because I think that it goes from such a dark, and I love the way that it stripes and that sort of thing, but goes from such a dark color to such a light color so quickly. You could most probably put in another color along there, but of course that could just be the light. And I do like all the little bits of shading, which is very, very subtle. So you'll see it here along the wings and that sort of thing. So I think all of that is looking absolutely freaking phenomenal. All right, so we've got a bit more of a close-up. Yeah, take a look at that eye, ladies and gentlemen, the way that he's done that sort of dull glow to the eye. I think that that looks absolutely beautiful. And the way that he's done up the tongue and so on, just... And the purple gums there, those very sort of bruised and upset gums. And we've got a bit of a close-up shot of the base. I really love how he's done up that mushroom right there. I think that that looks just great. I think that that looks really nice. I think that around here, it's a bit too obvious with the transition. You could have done, a bit of a sand build up there to make it so that it's not as obvious. But, I think that that's looking pretty damn nice. But take a look at the subtlety with the differences in the black there, right? Like the edging there, I think that that looks absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, it is a very nice model. Oh, and take a look at the sort of scratchiness with the wings right here. That's just gorgeous, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely gorgeous. I love it. I absolutely love it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that is it for our week. I'm going to let our few viewers here have a chance to comment on any of the things that they want to comment on. So apparently I haven't posted up my resin pictures, so I'm gonna have to do that, ladies and gentlemen. I do believe I've got them on the camera already, so I don't think it shows that much at the moment. But ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, now is the time. But if nobody has any questions, we'll be finishing up. So yeah, working with resin is a very interesting process, and some of the times weather very much is a factor, ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that I've given enough time to anybody to write a question between now and then, and I don't see any questions as of yet. So do what I always do. I'm going to say, keep those brushes wet, and I will see you later. See ya.